Hello, I'm Sharon Tong. Welcome to In Parliament. The debate on the White Paper on Population continued today with one key issue resonating in the speeches of many MPs. The concern many had was, with the plan to bring in more foreigners into Singapore, would the Singaporean identity be diluted? Questions were asked about how to maintain a strong Singaporean core. MP for Holland-Bukit Timah GRC Liang submitted a proposal to amend the White Paper to further reinforce the point on encouraging more Singaporeans to get married and have children in order to maintain a strong Singaporean core, a point several others also agreed with.
I'm more concerned about the high proportion of foreigners relative to citizens residing in this island come 2030. And I cannot imagine what kind of Singapore it will be like, where we have a high proportion of foreigners as high as 45%. So due credit must be given to the White Paper for pointing this out so that we can know this possible scenario. And we still have time to prevent this from happening. Besides stronger incentive to improve citizen fertility rate and increase productivity to reduce dependence on foreign workers, we should test bed new business idea, new business model and technology where foreigners can work for us and yet remain in their home country, for example, by way of offshoring.
What does it mean to maintain a strong Singaporean core? Who forms the Singaporean core? I submit that the Singaporean core must comprise all Singapore citizens, local born or otherwise, who have pledged allegiance to Singapore and share our key values such as hard work, meritocracy, and multiculturalism. Like many in this house, I myself was not born in Singapore, but I decided to cast my lot with Singaporeans. So does that make me any less of a Singaporean citizen than someone born in Singapore? As much as any new citizen could pack up and leave Singapore, so could any other Singaporean. Instead, we should continue to enhance our integration efforts to help new citizens adapt to our Singaporean way of life and sink deep roots while adding to Singapore's rich diversity. It will take time, perhaps one generation, for the children of these new citizens to undergo the same rites of passage as our homegrown children.
In 2011, 9,000 Singaporeans married foreigners. Some immigrant families have sunk their roots in Singapore, or immigrants have formed new families with Singapore spouses. We want to start building the Singapore core with this group. This way, there is greater possibility of a foreign immigrant being more rooted and integrated to Singapore through marriage. It is an interesting fact that the number of additional births this nation needs to replace itself is nearly the same number of babies or pregnancies that we see aborted each year. One solution to boost our low birth rate is to improve our family and social support to unwed mothers or even mothers in families caught in a difficult situation. The government can do more to encourage and support married women who account for more than 50% of the abortions in Singapore to keep and raise their children.
Addressing these concerns, Minister in the Prime Minister's office, Grace Fu, assured members of the House that the government's focus is on a strong Singaporean core.
Allowing immigration does not mean that we do not take our marriage and parenthood objectives seriously. Members have spoken on the risk of taking in too many immigrants too quickly. It takes time and effort for our immigrants to understand and to adapt to our norms. If the texture of society changes too quickly, we will experience a sense of displacement and erosion of our national identity. We fully understand the concerns of Singaporeans feeling displaced in our own country.
She said government has calibrated immigration policies over the years to get a slower but better quality immigrants. Integration efforts will be stepped up as well. Ms. Fu also addressed several Malay MPs' concerns about the impact of immigration on Singapore's racial balance.
We recognize the need to maintain the racial balance in Singapore's population in order to preserve social stability. The pace and profile of our immigration intake have been calibrated to preserve this racial balance. The proportion of Malays in the citizen population has been stable over the years. In 2000, it is 14.9%. and in 2010 is 15.1%. In fact, it has increased slightly. It is our policy to maintain the ethnic balance in the citizen population as far as possible.
And at the centre of the government's population policies was encouraging marriage and parenthood. Referring to the recently boosted marriage and parenthood package, Ms. Fu said in order to raise the total fertility rate, certain mindsets will need to change.
In the 2012 Marriage and Parenthood Study, 77% of married respondents indicated that couples would have little problem having children even when they were over 35 years old. This is of course not true, as fertility already starts going to decline in our late 20s. We need to make couples aware of the need to prioritize starting a family alongside career and other aspirations. Left too late, fertility treatments will not be able to overcome the age-related decline in fertility. The success rates of artificial reproduction technology treatments are only about 25%. We have received a fair amount of feedback on the education system and would like to reassure parents that we have heard their feedback. MOE has started to rebalance our education system. We have introduced diverse educational pathways in our systems to cater to those with different areas of strength and different learning needs. MOE is making changes at a steady pace that is appropriate for the children.
Ms. Fu said the silver tsunami hitting Singapore today is the result of the baby boom during the years before Singapore's independence. For the elderly, there will be a need for more caregivers in the future.
Although I think the Honourable Member Chen Sharma has said that, the elderly these days are probably better off, they're happier, they're engaged, they can live longer with healthcare and scientific development. I agree. But there will be a day when they will become frail and they will need care, as Member Lilino has so vividly described. The care that is needed on a very close basis, one-to-one. Even if we can move it to an institutional setting, we need more people in the institution giving care to our elderly.
What the white paper proposes, Ms. Fu said, is a future that will give young Singaporeans the most options in the future.
This is to ensure that we as a people will continue to be united and strong. That as a country, Singapore remains an attractive place to live, work and play. That our children and their children will find this country a place worth fighting for. To realize this dream, I believe in building a strong Singaporean core, creating good opportunities for Singaporeans, and planning building a high-quality living environment.
Now, a considerable amount of time was also spent debating the Workers' Party's proposals put forward yesterday by its party chairman, Sylvia Lim. The opposition party had proposed that the growth of foreign worker numbers can be reined in by increasing the labour force participation rate of Singaporeans. Aljunied GRC MP Chen Shou-Mao elaborated today on how the economically inactive Singaporeans could be incentivised to join the workforce to boost participation rates. This includes homemakers, foreign spouses of Singaporeans and the elderly.
We should stop seeing elderly Singaporeans as a drain on our economy and a hindrance to our goal to keep Singapore dynamic. Older Singaporeans have much to offer us, and not all of it can be measured in economic terms. In fact, our elderly Singaporeans are essential to maintaining a Singapore core.
You have described the outcomes. You've described the positives, the values in encouraging older workers and how they contribute. I'm actually interested in how do you intend to actually bring that about? I'm very interested to know the specific programs you have in mind, obviously because you've been talking about elderly for a long time. Surely you have very concrete ideas which I'll be very happy to look at.
It was a point the acting Manpower Minister repeated when Non-Constituency MP GERALD GIAM elaborated on the Workers' Party proposal. Mr. GIAM said the labour participation rate of Singaporeans can be raised by 1% a year till 2030.
A key component of your strategy is to beef up LFPR, or labour force participation rates, to such a stage that we actually do not need foreign workers in Singapore, or at least an increase. I am very interested to know the initiatives and ideas that would actually bring that about. And that's key. It's not the rhetoric that's important. Governance is about how do you translate ideas, visions into reality. And that's what it's really about. Not just rhetoric, not just pressing the right emotive buttons. It's about making things happen so that we can realize, I think, a shared vision about how to make things better for Singaporeans.
I'm not sure why the minister seems to be implying that we're just doing rhetoric. We intend to push for measures to increase the labour force participation rate. We've mentioned things like flexi work, telecommuting, part-time work. But I think one area that is very important, it's a very important way of increasing the labour force participation rate, is to raise wages. And the reason is because it increases the opportunity cost of people staying at home.
May I just clarify with the member, does the Workers' Party's zero tolerance for foreign workers in this period extend to sectors like construction and others where we are having great difficulty finding Singaporeans to do the job? And secondly, this implies zero immigration, meaning no new Singapore citizens or PR. And I'm trying to reconcile that with the statement by the Workers' Party chairman who advocated extending citizenship and PR to selective groups.
We do not have a zero-tolerance policy towards foreigners. The Workers' Party is not an anti-immigrant party, and we welcome foreigners who come here to be able to contribute to our economy, contribute to our life over here. Regarding the specific question on things like construction, we have said that we don't see a need to increase the foreign labour force numbers. It does not mean that we kick out all the foreigners right now. We maintain the numbers that are here and replace those that need to that leave. I'm saying that we can hit zero if we increase our resident labour force. It is not our goal to hit zero foreign worker increments. Our goal is to hit that 1% resident workforce, and we believe with that 1% resident workforce increase, we can hit the growth that we need to be able to sustain a better life for our Singaporeans.
I'm surmising from this that the Workers' Party position is you presume 1% growth in the resident workforce, and in that context, there's no increase in foreign worker numbers in Singapore, even if it means construction and other sectors that are having difficulty getting those workers from the Singapore pool are unable to do so.
Business models cannot change overnight. So if we really care about companies, then we will not tighten the labour workforce any further, give them a chance, a longer time horizon to restructure, and then talk about tightening the labour force. But what the Workers' Party is proposing is just shut off the tap right now. That is not going to accelerate restructuring. It's going to kill companies.
Boosting infrastructure to meet the needs of the growing population was also covered. Transport Minister Lui Tak Yew says people should see a gradual but noticeable improvement in public transport with the growth in Singapore's rail and bus network over the next 5 years. Re-signalling work will increase capacity during peak hours on the north-south and east-west lines by 20%, and with the delivery of new trains by 2015, about 70% more total capacity will be added to the north-east corridor and 60% more capacity for the Circle Line. Half of the 550 buses promised under the 5-year bus service enhancement program will be on roads by year-end, which means more new routes. To improve bus reliability, close to $50 million will be spent to add about 30 kilometres of bus lanes, to increase the mandatory giveaway scheme by another 150 bus stops, and quadrupling the number of bus hubs from 10 to 40. On train reliability, the Transport Ministry aims to halve the train withdrawal rate to 1 train withdrawal for every 2,000 trips as more attention is given to preventive maintenance and trains are upgraded. Authorities will also review schemes to adjust travel behaviour for greater effectiveness so off-peak travel can be encouraged.
I can appreciate how unthinkable it may seem that we can accommodate a population by 2030 that is 30% higher than today, even though we have firm plans to double the rail network over the same period. A possible 6.9 million population by 2030 is the parameter that we are using to plan for our land transport infrastructure. We have sized the doubling of the rail network so that there is sufficient buffer for the projected or possible 30% population increase as well as change in travel behaviors. I know that commuters should find traveling more convenient with this expanded network and their journey a more predictable and comfortable one. But we do not need to wait till 2030 for this to happen.
Other transport issues were covered during question time. Transport Minister of State Josephine Teo says the government is open to reviewing the Certificate of Entitlement or COE categorization system. She said COE prices are determined largely by demand, which is in turn influenced by many factors like interest rates and the economy's state. But she said it's important to look closely at the various suggestions put forward to tweak the COE system to see if they would really be effective in promoting lower prices without distorting the market.
The government is mindful that some businesses have a critical need for vehicles, and that is why several concessions are in place to help businesses with their transport costs. Businesses bid for COEs for commercial vehicles in a separate Category C and do not have to compete with private car buyers in Categories A and B. In addition, the additional registration fee, or ARF, for most goods vehicles is set at 5% of the vehicle's open market value instead of the 100% OMV applicable to cars.
Mrs. Teo also explained that tweaking the COE system to favour first-time car buyers may induce people to get around the arrangement. For example, a second-hand buyer can register a vehicle under the name of someone who has not bought a car. She was responding to calls for help to help certain groups afford a vehicle. Mrs. Teo also says it is hard to justify who deserves a car more than another, whether it is a growing household which needs a second vehicle or singles getting their first car.
In land-scarce Singapore, unfortunately, we do not have the luxury of letting everyone own a car. We also cannot put car ownership in the same category as housing, health or education, which are basic necessities. Our current vehicle quota system, or VQS, is not a perfect system, but still the most appropriate way to allocate a limited and non-basic resource.
And questions about public transport were also fielded. Transport Minister Lui Tak Yew said public transport fare increases in Singapore over the last few years have been lower than in cities such as Hong Kong, London and New York. He added that public transport fares have been adjusted in small amounts 7 times over the last 10 years by the Public Transport Council. There was also an occasion in 2009 where the PTC reduced fares because of adverse economic conditions, despite the fare formula yielding a fare increase. And while public transport operators have increased bus driver salaries recently, Mr. Lui expects that going forward it would be a challenge for PTOs to do more without fare increases or government subsidies.
From 2006 to 2011, fares increased cumulatively by 0.3%. Diesel prices for that same period went up by about 55%. And national wages by over 25% for this same period from 2006 to 2011. This has caused a significant shortfall between fare increases and operating cost increases and put downward pressure on wages for public transport employees.
National Development Minister Koh Boon Wan says the core principle behind the pricing of new HDB flats remains affordability. The prices of new HDB flats are set based on the typical household income of families, the market price of similar resale flats in the vicinity, and the flat size and location. Mr. Koh said a discount is then applied to ensure the flats are affordable. First-timers are also given a grant of up to $60,000.
If I heard correctly, just now Minister mentioned that the resale price of the flats in the vicinity is taken into consideration. I thought recently Minister mentioned that the price of the new BTO flat has just delinked from the resale price.
The member has not heard wrongly. Both statements are correct. We take into account those factors, we apply a discount, and then we give extra grants to the members. But in recent months, because when I delink, what the meaning of delinking means, I vary the discounts so that the prices can maintain steady.
The percentage of Singaporeans who did not complete secondary education today is less than 1% compared to 10 years ago when it was 4%. And 94% went on to post-secondary education, up from 10 years ago when it was 86%. Growth in median gross monthly income from work over the last 10 years was 1.3% per annum, while the 20th percentile was 0.1% per annum during the same period. Acting Minister for Social and Family Development Chan Choon-Sing shared these figures in Parliament today in response to a question by nominated Member of Parliament Ms. Tan Su Shan on how Singapore has fared in social mobility. But Ms. Tan had concerns that Singapore's intergenerational elasticity is less mobile than Hong Kong and other Scandinavian countries.
Is there any proactive measures taken by the ministry to try and stop this vicious poverty trap, to lift the bottom 20% of Singaporeans out of this vicious cycle?
We are focusing a lot on our efforts on childcare and education to make sure that the next generation have the best head start possible and to be roughly at the same starting point before they go onwards in the rest of their lives.
And while some couples may be disappointed to have missed the start date of the enhanced baby bonus and Medisave grant, Minister in the Prime Minister's office, Ms. Grace Fu, says such dates have to be specified for administrative efficiency. The announcement of the Marriage and Parenthood package was made last month, but the enhanced baby bonus and Medisave grant will apply to children born on or after 26 August 2012. Ms. Fu said this is the date when these measures were first alluded to by the Prime Minister at the National Day rally. She was replying to a question by Member of Parliament Ms. Tin Pei Ling on whether the date can be extended to cover all Singaporean citizen children born on or after 1st January 2012.
Could there be a better defined criteria, for example, perhaps dated from the date of announcement earlier this year, 1 year back, so that children who are at least 1 year or younger, their parents can actually benefit from the enhanced baby bonus?
We would prefer not to have measures that are retrospectively applied. And I'm sure if we had heeded the call of the member and apply the effective date to 1 year prior to the announcement in January, those who have just missed the December deadline would also say that it is probably not unfair. It's probably unfair to them. My encouragement to the parents who feel that they are disappointed by these measures that we have not backdated, that perhaps they would consider having more babies, and then these new babies will be able to benefit from this enhanced package.
The debate on the population white paper resumes tomorrow. Good night.